Just when you thought you'd seen the end of throwback shooters, 3D Realms comes along and kicks the whole thing off again with Wrath, Aeon, Ruin. And you know you're doing something right with these boomer shooters if the name of your game sounds like a death metal band. Anyway, this is yet another throwback shooter running on the Quake engine, developed by Kill Pixel, a team comprised of guys who worked on the awesome Arcane Dimensions mod for Quake-1, a mod that showed off the potential for what that engine could be capable of doing. And I gotta say that it shows, because Wrath is a pretty damn gorgeous looking game, capturing the simplistic essence of pixelated level design, and then combining it with the chunky and hard-hitting combat of the Quake engine. The Quake engine has never been treated so lovingly, and the shooting has never felt so good. The whole thing's just come out in early access on Steam, and I mean, it worked for Dusk, Medieval, and Ion Fury, so why not this too, right? Oh yeah, and spoiler alert, the whole thing is pretty dope, even if it is light on content. Wrath is a little bit more interesting though than those other games, and somewhat more unique. Dusk felt a lot like Blood and Redneck Rampage, Medieval of course felt very similar to Heretic, and Ion Fury was a bit of a mishmash of the various build engine games that 3D Realms worked on in the 1990s. Wrath on the other hand features level design reminiscent of something like Hexen 2, and I also got a real Daikatana vibe from some of these areas too. I mean, the setting and the backdrop felt a lot like Episode 3 from John Romero's 2000 masterpiece. Yeah, masterpiece. I didn't stutter. Instead of being able to mash the quick save button anytime you want though, you instead need to find items called soul tethers to manually save with. Again, kinda similar to the save crystals in Daikatana. And you've also got shrines which refill your health and then act as checkpoints. The new inclusions are artifacts that work as power-ups, one which gives you invulnerability and the other one that restores health points for every kill. About the only thing linking it to those other games though, aside from jumping in on the whole throwback shooter genre, is that Andrew Holsholt has done the music. You can bugger around with the visual settings to play with the texture filtering, making the engine look more like Quake 2 than Quake 1. Or change the pixel scaling to the point that it looks like a Super Nintendo port. Still, if you're at all familiar with shooting games, the core gameplay is the same and it won't exactly rock your world, not that that's a bad thing. They've just gone for a tried and true formula. The movement controls are fast, smooth and responsive, and circle strafing and mobility are the order of the day. Wrath apparently has a story too, so in this you're an outlander. Once adrift upon the ageless sea, you now find yourself on the shores of a dying world. You're tasked with hunting down the guardians of the old world, discovering forgotten secrets and battling the horrors that lurk within. Damn. You're given 3 difficulty modes at the start, easy, normal and hard. And if you don't select hard without a second thought, well, you're dead to me. None of this hurt me plenty rubbish. Then once the game starts, you're dropped into the hub area called Morningvale, which is a large open environment with 2 portals for the player to explore that leads to the game's current 2 playable levels. You can play these in any order, but the first one I did was the Undercroft, which is a series of catacombs, graveyards and temples. The outside areas are covered in snow, and inside, corridors are dimly lit and eerie. The second one's called the Mire, taking place in a bunch of sewers and murky, swampy locations, where you'll spend so much time underground that you'll be begging to see the sunlight. The level design is a combination of fixed enemy placements, but also enemies spawning in when you pick up some kind of important item, like a piece of armor or some health points. And the game sure is generous when it comes to health, ammo, and armor pickups. You'll almost have to want to run out of ammo in this thing. Yeah, bet you're glad you played on hard now, huh bitch? Now, this is early access, and it's what I'd compare to like a shareware episode from an old game like Doom or Quake. So don't expect all that much content. In fact, if you're at all half decent at shooters, it won't even take you all that long to get through the whole thing. For a first playthrough, the Undercroft took me about 45 minutes and the Mire took me about 30, both of which I really took my time and checked out as much of the environment as I really could. I killed everything that needed to be killed, and I did my best to find all of the secrets, even though I still missed like half a dozen. At the heart of a first-person shooter though are the guns, and in this version you get access to 5 weapons. You start off with the Ruination Blade, which is your melee weapon, a large blade that's strapped to the player's right hand. Primary attack just slices from left to right, but holding down alternate attack lets you charge forward for a short distance, able to hopefully turn a few enemies into a shish kebab. This is also handy for platforming because it can be used as a dash in mid-air to help you reach areas you can't normally jump to. The coach gun is a combination of a shotgun and a revolver. It's a 3-barreled weapon that fires either a single shot in primary mode or 3 shots at once as an alternate fire. This thing is your workhorse weapon, and it's still pretty useful at taking out enemies from a distance if you don't want to get in too close. The alternate fire mode is where it functions a bit like a shotgun with more spread, forcing you to get up close and personal, and really make friends with the enemies before unloading in their face. Yep, that kinda sounded wrong. They've skipped the whole shotgun and super shotgun thing and instead just gone right for the double-barreled option. This thing doesn't have a fancy name like the Widowmaker or the Shocker. Nothing creative like that anyway, it's just called a shotgun. But I mean, hey, if the shoe fits. The shotgun is a useful weapon against pretty much everything. It shines at point-blank range, but can also be effective from medium ranges too. You almost can't have a first-person shooter without including this kind of weapon, and this thing makes a suitably beefy noise when fired, and has the desired result of turning most enemies into red mist when they're hit by it. And the alternate fire mode charges up the shotgun and fires out more damaging pellets that bounce around. Anyway, in the 4th weapon slot, you know what's coming. This is your fast-firing automatic weapon. In Quake, this was the nail gun, and to the shock of absolutely nobody, this thing in Wrath is basically the exact same. Yeah, the 4th weapon is the Fang Spitter, and it tells you all you need to know in the name alone. Its name also encapsulates 2 things I look for in a woman: fangs and spitting. This thing is pretty awesome. It fires really quickly and does decent damage, but it does lose a bit of its effectiveness against multiple tougher enemies. The alternate fire mode for this thing fires off 2 fangs at once instead of 1, making the kind of sound that reverberates through solid concrete. I mean, doctors could use the bass from this sound effect to turn a patient's kidney stone to dust. There was just something so fun about using this gun. I don't think I ever got sick of it, and you're given so much ammo for it that you can pretty much use it constantly. It's just another cool weapon, and the animation when firing, how the weapon cycles through to the next round, just looks awesome. And finally, you've got the Retcher, a weird, organic-looking weapon that shoots out these explosive cysts. Imagine your mum's ping pong show, but replace the ping pong balls with explosive goo, and you're getting the right idea. This thing is basically just the Bio Rifle from Unreal Tournament, and it's easily the best weapon in the entire game, and the alternate fire can just shred through groups of enemies. Even the tougher ones go down like a bag of shit. What's good too is that you can't ever really just get by with a single weapon. Every area and encounter requires a different strategy to overcome it, so as good as the shotgun is, it's not always going to be the most effective option. This encourages learning all of the weapons and their capabilities, which I think gives the shooting a lot more depth. I mean, I guess you could finish the entire thing with the Ruination Blade, but you can also go and stick your nuts into an electrical socket too. And all of these guns won't mean diddly squat if you don't have a good rogue gallery of enemies to kill with them. First off, with your enemies, you've got the Fallen. Now, these are basically just mindless zombies that shamble around. They don't offer that much of a challenge, but they do have the nice habit of having their limbs fall off when you attack them, which looks lovely. The Invaders are like the Grunts, which are basically just zombies with guns. Not much to say here, just shoot them until they die from it. Then you've got the Afflicted. Now, these things are a bit more dangerous. They're covered in more boils and sores than a junkie at a Western Sydney train station, and they throw the same crap at you that you use as the ammo for the Retcher. When they're killed, they also explode, which is handy if it kills nearby enemies, but can also damage the player if you're too close. But that effect when they die sure does look pretty. Next up is the Wraiths, which are basically the Scrags from Quake. They're hovering torso-looking things that fire out projectiles. Only the Wraiths are far less annoying than the Scrags, and they die a lot quicker. Widows are like faster zombies with giant fangs coming out of their chest, looking like some kind of offspring out of John Carpenter's The Thing. Then you've got the Heretics, which are Wrath's version of the Cacodemons. Floating fat heads that fire out projectiles. They even look a bit like the pain elementals from Doom 64. Just like the Cacodemons too, when you shoot these big fat assholes with the alternate fire for the Fang Spitter, it stun locks them, making them unable to fight back. And the animation for that makes them look special. The last couple of enemies though are kind of a pain in the piss hole. The first one is the Executioner. These are big armoured guys that have a lot more health points and the kind of broken reach with their hitboxes that makes the fiends from Quake seem balanced in comparison. The The other ones are the Stricken, and these are easily the most annoying enemies in the entire game. They're like bigger, larger frog versions of the Afflicted, but they can often spam those cyst attacks so quickly. You can barely utter the word bullshit before you catch one of these things with your face. They are manageable though, and it's not like they're impossible to beat, but out of every enemy type in the game, they were the only ones that had me kind of like raise an eyebrow when I fought them. Now watch me totally contradict myself and say that my only real issue with the game is that it's too easy. I just always found I had a whole heap of soul tethers to save my progress, and I was always flushed with ammo, that nothing in the game really dished up any kind of super tough challenge. Apparently too, playing on hard mode reduces the amount of items, but increases the amount of enemies. But still, I didn't really find it too challenging. And look, I'm not trying to flex my internet dick or anything, I'm just being honest. I mean, that's not really a bad thing though, and the fact that you can outright avoid death a lot of the time is a bit of a testament to how good the shooting mechanics are, and the balancing of most of the enemy types. Like I said, the only time I died was to my own fault, not to something that felt unfair or out of my control. That's a good thing. I do think there are some improvements that could be made, like I definitely think they need to work on the lighting in the Undercroft, because some of those areas are super dark and just lacking light sources. You can go back and replay the levels, but all of the enemies are still dead, so the only way to go back and replay levels properly is just to restart the entire game. An option to maybe respawn the enemies would at least be nice. But really, I'm just nitpicking. It's early days and I still think Wrath is an easy sell. 3D Realms have proven they can make the early access model work, and once again they're working with a talented bunch of level designers and modders to create something unique, but that still retains the elements of what makes throwback shooters so much fun. Some people have even got the Quake maps working with the Wrath assets too, opening up the potential for community content at some point too. I'd like to do a longer video and tongue the game's asshole even more, but there's really not all that much more stuff to say right now. I've squeezed as much of the metaphorical blood out of the stone as I possibly could. So head over to Steam and check the whole thing out. If it looks like it tickles your ballsack, then throw some money their way and support the development. You know you want to, boomer.